Scarlet Monastery is the best way to hit level 40. I broke down the route and everything in my previous video, but I kept getting the same question. What is the most efficient way of actually clearing the place? Well boy, do I got a video for you! As you know, Scarlet Monastery is the first tier where your classes really start to pop off and they get really powerful and you can start doing some crazy pulls. However, there are several strategies that you can take for speed clearing, and if you come out with anything from this video, just be that whatever strategy you actually choose, you gotta commit to it. Mixing and matching compositions and not committing to the concept is gonna lose your efficiency, people are gonna be holding you back, you're gonna have more downtime, it just doesn't work. Just because a class is really good in one comp, it doesn't mean that it's gonna be good in another. You are going to understand when I explain the comps better. But before that, let's cover a little basics. First of all, you wanna get the Boon of Black Fathom, not for the damage, although of course that's really nice, but for the 20% move speed. This is gonna be the difference between outrunning mobs or getting one shot. Also get Mage Water. I am often mad at Pog healers because I say they should be well over half their mana and they are always low on mana, and it is because they refuse to drink every pool. It's pretty simple, guys. Just run ahead, stop a drink and get a couple ticks off. You can start drinking before somebody pulls, and then you can drink while people are fighting the mobs until people actually need your heals. So you should be able to drink like 4 ticks every pull easily. You got no excuse to go out of mana. The difference between a mediocre healer and an excellent healer is not mechanics, it's not skill. Frankly, healing is pretty easy. The main difference is that a good healer finds every little opportunity to get a little more mana back. That's it. Some people drink, some people complain about not enough time for drinking. Finally, remember that all of Scarlet Monastery shares the same ID and you can only clear 5 IDs per hour. So if you are following this guide, you are gonna get locked out and you're gonna have to mix up some of the wings together. For example, if you're farming Graveyard, you may wanna put like one run of library in between so you can save some time doing that while you wait for the reset. But okay, let's talk about the comps. Every single class except one can fit in either of these comps pretty well, and the one that is the exception is the Rogue. Sadly, the Rogue doesn't have any good cleaving damage and it doesn't have any good utility either, no utility period actually. And that makes them very bad for this kind of clearing. Like if you know a good rogue that pumps, you can take him, but it's not ideal. It is never gonna be ideal. Okay, that aside, let's talk about the sustain comp, more often called the melee cleaving comp. Of course, that is a common misconception. There are a couple non-melee specs that also work here very well. We're gonna talk about that too. But the point of this comp is doing pulls in quick succession, one after another, pulling about 4 mobs every time, and just pumping and going and never stopping. This comp is much easier to execute without any sort of communication, voice chat, Discord, whatever, because the pulls themselves are relatively safe. This will be more than anything a test on your healer, because like I said, they gotta sneak in drink in every pool and they gotta keep up with everybody just not stopping, and that is a challenge, I'm not gonna pretend it's not. And ideally, they also gotta help DPS on the downtime. Now my ideal healer for this is the Resto Shaman. They can provide Wind Fury at level 34, and of course we're getting a lot of melee, so that's really good. And they also got Earth Shield and Healing Rain, which is some very good low threat heals. And being able to do little threat is very important for a healer in this comp, because we are going tankless, okay? We are just gonna take about 2 warriors at least, and they are just gonna split the threat in between all the melees and they are just gonna handle it. We are not taking a tank. Of course, any other healer can work just fine, but the Shaman is the one I prefer. You can also even take a Mage healer here because they can help DPS, so they are pretty good. And they can go Living Flame and just heal everybody for a gazillion if they need to. Like I said, the bread and butter for this composition is gonna be an arms warrior. Any warrior with a big two-hander is gonna do very well, especially if they go arms and they take sweeping strikes, because that damage is gonna be insane. You can also even take a Feral Druid to help with the DPS, and he can also give Wind Fury if you are Alliance, of course, and they can even go Bear and tank the bosses if they need to. Retribution Paladins with Divine Storm also do excellent here. They got Blessings, which are great, and you also got Enhancement Shamans. They got Earthbind, they can AoE slow the mobs, and they are not as good as a Paladin, but they do good damage with the totems and the Nova and everything, and they can also provide some vital utility. For example, Earthbind Totem, I never see people do this in vanilla. In TBC we always do this, but you can slow the mobs and kite them. Yes, tanks can kite the mobs too. Try it. It helps a lot with the damage taken. Just the same way that you would hamstring kite a mob if you're a warrior leveling, you know what that means? Just the same way you can also kite with Earthbind. Of course, the Enhancement Shaman can also take Shamanistic Rage. It is gonna generate a lot of mana for the healer, and that's gonna make it a lot easier too. However, there is also two good classes that are not melee for this. One of them is gonna be the Warlock. The Warlock with all the multi-doding, he can do some very good damage on a cleaving situation, and they also got infinite sustain with life tap as long as the healer allows, so they are really good altogether. Even a Metamorphosis Warlock tank is pretty good here. Another one is the Hunter, who can have a pet hold aggro for one of the mobs too and help a little, and they do decent damage with multi-shot. Everybody likes a Hunter. One big thing you gotta remember about this is that you gotta kick the casters. If you can interrupt a spell, you gotta get aggro on the caster, interrupt it and drag it into the group so they can cleave it. That is huge for taking less damage and for pumping more. Everybody needs to help with that. You just pull, you stack the mobs, and you rinse and repeat over and over. It's pretty fun. Now for all the casters, this is your comp, and we're gonna talk about spell cleaving. This is the big pull comp. This one is the opposite in almost every way. You drink, you do big pulls, and then you take a break and you refresh and you do it again. And it is pretty hard to properly execute at the max level. You also need some pretty specific classes for this. First of all, you are gonna need a priest healer, because you're gonna need the shields to pull without getting dazed and like be able to do good pulls. Secondly, we are gonna need one control class. This basically means anybody that can apply an AoE slow. The most obvious one is Improved Blizzard with the mage. You know, when they DPS they slow everybody down. That is the most traditional one. But you can also take, for example, a Hunter with Frost Trap. You can also take something like a Shaman with the Earthbind Totem like I mentioned. And this here is where you really like engineering, because being able to drop grenades and bombs on the mobs to stun them in place, it makes a huge difference, especially because there's a lot of casters in this place, and being able to just stun them in the middle of a spell is gonna save the healer so much mana. The other vital class that you need is a puller. There is a couple possible options. Warlocks, sadly they got nerfed. You cannot use them for pulling anymore. It is pretty tricky, but you can use, for example, a Hunter with Eyes of the Beast. They can control their pet, and if you get a cat with dash, they can just run really fast and pull everything and die, and all the mobs come to you, right? Otherwise, you can take two mages. One can go pull one side, the other guy can pull the other side, and just converge in a line of sight spot. You need mages that are pretty good, because you gotta know when to blink and how to avoid the mobs, but it is possible. You can definitely do that. Another niche option is a Consecrate Redoubt Spec Paladin. This is basically the AoE tanking paladin. They can survive quite a whacking, and they can do decent damage with Consecrate, and they can actually hold threat in a lot of these situations, so they are pretty good to have. They definitely gotta kite the mobs to survive, but this works. They do work. Now, once you get all the mobs pulled in, what you gotta do is go back to the spot where you're trying to line of sight the mobs away, and you wanna drop your AoE slow in that very corner where they turn through the wall to get you. If you have a mage puller, you can actually use Ice Block to stack them super neatly, and then you have somebody else Frost Nova all the mobs in place, so you can break out of Ice Block and blink away really fast. Once they are all neatly stacked and Novad, you can actually go through the pumping phase, which means kill them really fast. And you want at least two mages in the comp for this very reason, because they do great damage, they got insane control. Living Bomb is broken, and if they so choose, they can also keep the raid alive with Regeneration and Living Flame. Warlocks also do very good damage now, because they got Lake of Fire and Incinerate, so their Lake of Fire does a lot of damage, and if you have a tank paladin, putting Fire Shield on the paladin helps a lot. You can also take an Enhancement Shaman, believe it or not, because they got the Fire Nova Totem, it does a lot of damage, they got the Magma Totem of course, and with Shamanistic Rage they can actually give mana back to the pumpers, because if you are not doing the pulls exactly super clean, you are gonna go through mana issues, and having like that little good cooldown for more mana is huge. Finally, I know that people say that warriors with Ravager do very well here, and the truth of the matter is they can work, you can do it, there is problems with it. First of all, if you do the Ravager proc and you AoE, you are stuck in place, you cannot move. And if somebody Frost Novas the mobs, all the aggro will go to you and you are gonna die. They have the potential to do the most damage out of any AoE class in this tier, they definitely can do it, but at the same time, you need a very well coordinated group with mages that know when to Nova and when to not Nova so he doesn't die. You need a very smart warrior and possibly a very good healer too. They can work, I do not recommend it for this comp, just take them to the melee clip comp, that's their home. Now, you do not need to actually learn every single spot to pull here, you can just wing it and do pretty well. What you gotta look forward to is trying to find a wall that can make all the mobs line of sight and at the same time from a place that will make them all come from one angle, from single file. As a matter of fact, when you plan out how you're gonna pull the mobs, you gotta try to do it in a route that will make them chase you through the other side of the wall, just so they can come at the exact same angle, every single one of them at the same time. It's nothing that you cannot learn with just a little dying. It is super fun actually to push yourself and to try to see how many mobs you can pull without dying. It is pretty fun, and with the new rules, we don't even know what kind of insanity we're gonna see. We are probably gonna see like people doing one pull cathedrals or something stupid like that. It's gonna be great. Subscribe, leave a like, join the Discord, and thank you for watching.